If you inherited your late father's house, popped in one of the VHS tapes he left behind, and discovered he'd been keeping a woman imprisoned in his basement dungeon for over 20 years, and then realized no one's opened that basement door yet, what would you do? If you answered, open it, congratulations. Your brain is getting tongued by an absolute abomination. Whatever this thing is, it can also astral project into your bedroom at night to scare you, and that sucks. In this How to Beat video, I'll break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the mind witch, or the nightmare creature in Cursed Tapes. We start out following 15-year-old Paula. She's alone, selling Thin Mints to complete strangers out in the boonies, while her mom sits safely in the comfort of her climate-controlled Toyota.
Hello, I'm selling cookies.
Damn, these Girl Scouts are getting aggressive, shoving her way into your private domicile to fund her corporate overlords, lest she be lashed for failing to sell 300 boxes. The blood from this inevitable self-defense homicide is on your hands, Bonnie Barczykowski. Unfortunately for Bonnie, nobody's home. Paula turns around to leave, but stops when she hears a woman pleading, saying, "Help me." Wait, what? How the hell did she not see the giant trail of blood running through the entire living room? It's clearly visible from the doorway. She should have been hightailing it back to her mom the instant she saw that. But look, I get it. Paula's stuck between a rock and Bonnie Barczykowski. The homeowner might not be home, but the girl locked up in his basement that he abducted 20 years ago probably would like some peanut butter patties and lemonades. Those savory, refreshing shortbread cookies topped with a tangy lemon-flavored icing. I bet with how famished that feral basement dweller has to be, she could fill her entire order goal right here. All Paula has to do is stand just outside the reach of the chain, show that thing her phone has 911 queued up and ready to call as soon as she gets a signature. Undoubtedly, this is Paula's motivation, as she fearlessly follows the evil jelly bean blood trail. Oh look, there's a dead body at the end of it. What a surprise! The woman continues pleading for Paula to open the door and let her out. You know, the one covered in blood, crosses, and chains. Paula, I gotta be honest here. I don't think it's safe to open that door. You should probably just slip the clipboard under. Since the woman's voice isn't coming from the door, Paula asks, "How can I hear you from behind me?" To which the lady responds, "I'm speaking to you from the radio." How are you able to speak from objects? It's a radio? Now it makes sense why you're still selling Girl Scout cookies in high school. That feel when the one person who can save you has the intelligence of a caramel delight. Still, the radio thing is weird, so somehow you have a corresponding radio in the dungeon with you? That seems like an irresponsible thing that the man would give to his basement abductee. I don't know, maybe it's so she can communicate with him if she needs water or something. But then use restricted walkie-talkies, not some heirloom vintage radio. But seriously, no way I'm sticking around to play detective in an active homicide crime scene. It's bad for business. Even if I was inclined to play the naive Good Samaritan role, I'm not letting anyone out of any cage until I know all the facts. And the fact is, how the hell did the supposed bad man get killed if the only other person is locked up? Not adding up. What, you expect me to believe he merely tripped on his shoelaces, bounced his head off the doorknob, causing him to drop his 1911, which drop-popped around through his gut? Actually, that's pretty believable. Still, f*** that shit. She doesn't sound grievously injured to me. Sure, she's probably not in great health, but she's fine, okay? I'm sure she's fine. She's been down there since she was 6. She can wait a few more hours. I mean, who knows what mental state she's in? Probably one of the bad ones. Who knows what kind of physical state she's in also? Dude could have been pumping her full of anabolics for a decade. She could be a 6'2", 220-pound mass monster like that She-Hulk and Barbarian. Though if that was the case, you would think that the guy would have invested in more security than a few small, poorly installed chains. In any case, Paula is certifiably insane for standing with her back to a bloody man who may or may not be dead, who may or may not throw her in his basement next to his Rancor. She's also insane for standing that close to the bloody door, considering the slack on those chains could easily create enough of a gap for it to reach out and grab her. This is one of those lifeguard drowning rescue situations where the victim might attack and outright kill your to ensure their own freedom and safety. Needless to say, it probably has trust issues. She's growling. Yep, definitely trust issues. After that growl, she politely requests for Paula to snag the key off the dead man and unlock the basement door. Paula does as commanded without so much as a single inhibition. After unlocking one of the chains, Paula asks the woman to say something since she's been a bit quiet. The woman responds with something. Okay, you. That is not an appropriate response from someone in danger. Paula makes her last mistake, stepping within striking distance of the half-open, bloody chained-up door next to a dead body that's currently emanating heavy growling noises. Relax, it's just a flesh wound. I thought it'd just be a creepy, emaciated chick that grabbed her, like that old zombie man in Gehenna, where death lives. Nope. It chewed her arm right off. To round out the context of this situation, Paula's mom is sitting in the car listening to Lorde, thinking her daughter's racking up one hell of an order. All the other moms are going to be so jealous of how many stickers my daughter got. De-limbed, Paula turns to see the man that she thought was dead crawling towards her. Naturally, she crawls back towards the basement door to take a breather, with her head casually resting up against the same opening that a monster tore her arm off from. Oh my god! You do realize you can crawl away from both of them by moving towards the front door, which is also an exit. This girl is completely hopeless. Even the monster thing kind of peeks its head around the corner thinking, really? She's sitting right next to this door again? Wow, what an idiot. Paula might just be going down as the most painfully oblivious character in any movie I've watched. The very next scene is an estate yard sale for all of the dead guys' belongings. This can only mean that Paula's mom noticed her daughter didn't come back, strolled up to the home to investigate, saw the bodies, heard the same woman pleading for help, put her ear right up to the bloody chained-up door, and got her head ripped off too. Though at some point, someone intelligent had to arrive on the scene, see the abandoned Toyota and bloodbath, and call it in which case, it'd be an extremely high-profile case with reporters swarming the place. Except that never happened. As far as anyone knows, Paula and her mom were never there, and Grandpa Joe merely passed away. No blood, no bodies. It's certainly possible that the basement woman managed to break out and cleaned up her mess. However, the basement door is still chained up, and there's no sign of forced exit. This only leaves one other explanation. Someone else cleaned it. But who? Guess we'll find out later. For now, the deceased Grandpa Joe's son, Clint, has inherited the house. He's been going to and from, boxing up all his hoarded crap to sell in a yard sale back at his place. During these runs, his curiosity has not once been piqued by the chained-up basement door with a rune symbol that may or may not be drawn in blood, sitting in plain view of the living room. Just boxing up old stuff? What the fuck is that? What kind of sick shit was that into? He actually bought a cow-painted mini-stool with big ol' udders hanging off of it? I'm starting to feel a lot better about our estrangement. I guess it's not the creepiest thing in the world to have your basement door covered in chains and padlocks with obscure rune symbols that literally have no basis in recorded history. It is, alright? It's weird. It needs to be investigated. And the fact that it's not a linen closet and is technically a dungeon now, I'd say it should be investigated at the end of a Ronin Gen 12 shotgun. Yes, it's $6,000, but it's super cool. Totally relates to my 12th century Japanese heritage, and it'll make for a great coffee table conversation starter after I vanquish whatever demon is down there. Besides, it'll be a budget-neutral expense after I cash out on that little cow stool. While boxing up another load of Joe's crap, a lovely neighbor lady arrives with flowers. Her name is Susan. Susan says she used to sit on this here porch chatting with Joe every evening. They used to laugh, giggle, cry, and he would joke about a monster in his basement. She hands Clint a set of keys that Joe had apparently given to her for no explicable reason, which she claims she has no idea what they're for. And as she leaves, she also asks him if they ever found that animal that was attacking that little girl before, because she just can't stand the idea of something prowling around the neighborhood. Well, bye. Okay, let me get this straight. 1. Joe had to have been fatally wounded by teeth and claws as well. 2. Susan asks Clint if they ever caught that animal attacking the little girl around here, possibly referring to Paula here. Presumably, the cops think that Paula was mauled by an animal while working on her brownie badge, though it'd be known that she was walking up to Joe's house when this happened. 3. There is a chained-up basement door in this house with a mysterious rune symbol drawn on it. A basement which nobody has cracked open yet. 4. You show up talking about how you and Joe chatted every night. Oh, and by the way, he talked about a monster in his basement. So the man talking about a monster in his basement was later killed by a large vicious animal, as was a young girl right around here too, supposedly. You then provide me with a set of keys that are undoubtedly for the padlocks on the basement door. This set of keys, which Joe had given you for no reason, which you have no idea what they're for. Right. So, and I sure hope I'm not jumping to conclusions here. The monster Joe talked about having in his basement was a rabid animal of some kind. This animal somehow got out and killed Joe and Paula, and somehow Susan's holding on to the literal key to all this. Now, I can't figure out exactly what her part is, but she definitely knows more than she's letting on. Clint doesn't inquire further, and instead returns to sorting through his heap when something catches his eye. A VHS tape labeled "Got Home." Cue the Dutch angle. The video plays. It's his dad, Joe, saying, "Well, it's feeding time again. Guess I'm gonna have to pick up some drifter." He says he doesn't want to, but it won't touch Clint if he does. Bro, why are you recording yourself saying this? Uh-oh, that's not good. The VHS camera pans to poor little Peggy, scrounging up water and ramen noodles, fattening him up for the harvest.
Don't do that now.
Just because you're being extorted into feeding a monster drifters doesn't mean you have to strip them of all dignity prior, man. Damn, getting that bowl all nice and deep like with them whitey tighties. Give daddy a little squeal Peggy snort too.
Come on, squeal! Squeal!
The next tapes are labeled Gone Fishing and My Monster. That looks a lot like his neighbor Susan. I don't know what the sweet Stockholm Syndrome hell is going on, but they certainly were not just chatting on the porch watching the sunset. Either way, we need to pay her a visit and get some answers. Before we do, let's finish out the VHS tapes to gather all the evidence that we can. In the tapes, Grandpa Joe basically says this monster in his basement is kind of like a feral Freddy Krueger with the physical body of a Wendigo. He thinks it chose him because of my past trauma, which of course is a ridiculous explanation from an unreliable narrator. I can guarantee that you don't have that market cornered. Got some bad news for you, bro. The more likely explanation for why it chose you, for why any animal or creature targets a certain prey, is because you're gullible, weak, fat, isolated, and dumb. As the tapes allude to, he subdued the creature by shooting it, of course, unless you're an Aussie with a hell of a jab. That would really be the only way, considering it can rip your arm off in 2 seconds. The reason he chained it up was because he had shot this thing before, yet it didn't die. And after the third time, one wouldn't simply shoot it again and leave its seemingly incapacitated body again. You contain its moaning ass till you figure out how to kill it for good. To keep it contained, He clamped a collar around its neck and chained it to a bolt in the concrete floor. Then, for additional security, he chained up the basement door so that if it broke out of its shackles, it couldn't immediately jump him. Knowing what he knows about the creature, this doesn't seem anywhere near sufficient. Hence, his death at the start of the movie. A simple animal cage would be much better, preferably something with thick metal bars and cramped enough to severely restrict its movement. If this thing can heal from otherwise fatal gunshot wounds, we're gonna need a strong deterrent for any attempts to break out. And by strong deterrent, I of course mean highly lethal. Lucky for us, all we need to do is make a minor modification to its dog cage by cracking open a kitchen microwave, pulling out the transformer, and wiring it to the bars. Microwave oven transformers output around 2000 volts AC at up to 2 amps, roughly 20 times the current needed to instantly kill a human. If this thing so much as brushes up against the bars,
You so much as look at me wrong.
where Joe goes wrong again is listening to its lies. The monster told him that unless he fed it, it will attack his son Clint, which he believed, and fed this monster innocent drifters for years, decades. All the while the monster grew stronger, inevitably broke out, killed him, and immediately targeted Clint right after. Joe: what? Why did you go after Clint? You said if I fed you random people, you wouldn't kill my Clinty boy. Monster:
I lied.
truly shocking. Joe goes on to say that he believes this thing feeds on fear, and it's this fear that it is able to heal itself with. In the same breath, he claims that he's been starving it. It literally feeds on people. You're not starving it because you're feeding it people. It's far more plausible that this feral abomination regenerates by ingesting flesh, like every other organism on Earth, not by metabolizing some zero-calorie, naturally flavored, intangible emotion. Stop feeding the monster in your basement, and I bet you $100 that this thing simply perishes. The tape ends. Clint rightfully decides that before he opens that basement door, he needs to pay Susan a visit. He asks her about a man named Chester, who was off camera helping Joe deal with the monster. She says, "I have no idea who Chester is." Right as she finishes that sentence, a man walks by into the kitchen. Clint chases, calling out Chester's name. When he rounds the corner, my God, the man has vanished. Oh wait, no, there's another room right around the corner that he must have walked into. But for some reason, Clint stops 3 paces shy of actually checking it out. It's literally shot in a way that makes it seem like Clint thinks that the guy vanished, which is hilarious and raises a few obvious questions. If Chester didn't want to be seen, why did he walk right in front of Clint seconds before he was about to leave? If he didn't care about being seen, then why ignore Clint when he called his name? Then there's Susan. Why even open the door if she planned to lie about Chester living there? And if she was gonna lie, why not tell Chester to duck out of sight for 10 seconds while she turns Clint away? It's pretty clear that these two know more than they're letting on. Susan especially. She made herself known earlier, and now she's suddenly playing it secretive? Dumb. And let's not forget, she had to know that she was on Joe's tapes. She had the key to the cellar. Those tapes were left out in the open. Clint was obviously going to find them. None of this makes sense. And I refuse to bother trying to think it through because I guarantee the writers didn't. Now, after getting grilled by Clint asking the exact same questions, Susan hands him a note with an address on it, something that Joe supposedly gave her in a panic. And that's all she knows. She totally swears. Rolling all the way back to that yard sale at the beginning, Brandy, Sammy's mom, bought him that vintage heirloom radio which Joe used to communicate with the creature. The address that Susan just gave Clint is to their home. Joe couldn't have possibly known that they would buy the radio on account of him being dead at the time. So, this is another lie. It's also completely irrelevant to any aspect of the plot. Moving on. So Brandy bought him this radio because she wanted to, and I quote, give him something to listen to other than his own thoughts. Presumably because his dad died in some tragic accident or something. A shitty old yard sale radio. Really? Get the kid a bike, maybe a punching bag. Literally anything would be more therapeutic than sitting alone listening to staticky Pearl Jam reruns on 96.5 while you sob in the other room. Later that night, while Sammy's trying to sleep, pause. This kid is straight up asking to get pulled down into a clown's underworld dungeon the way his sockless feet are hanging out of the covers like that. Come on, man. Tuck that shit in. Anyway, young Sammy gets spooked by some shadows moving and weird sounds under his bed. Not wanting to check, but also not being able to sleep without checking, he decides to check by turning on his little ball lamp and hanging his head over the side of the bed. This kid is certifiably insane for hanging his head off the bed like that to look for monsters. You have zero leverage, and if something is under there, you are screwed. It's like I say, there's no point in visually seeing the threat if you don't have a means to fight or flee. This was just asking to get your head grabbed and yanked under. If I was a monster under your bed, I'd be hoping that this is exactly what you would do. Then I would shove my thumbs into your eyes, hook them into the orbital bone of your skull, wrap my fingers around the base of your head, and pull your ass down so I could chew through your neck. Just saying, if I was the monster. Best case, there's no monster down there. And when you pull yourself back up and turn around, the boogeyman is already under the covers ready to snuggle snuff you. Now, knowing this, I would suggest doing anything but this. Preferably, you run to your mommy saying that you had a nightmare, then use her as a meat shield while you make your escape. Lucky for him, none of this was the case. Yet he is determined to wander the house in search of the thing that he couldn't possibly defend himself against. Look, it's the thing that you were deathly afraid of, but thought could only exist in your imagination. Except it's real, and it's just down the hall from you. Damn, that sucks. Young Sammy weakly mutters, Mom? No, bro, that is not your mom. He manages to stall it with the ball lamp long enough for his mom to hear the noise and flip on the light. Being an ugly bitch who's afraid of the light, the creature activates its cloaking device and evasive dashes to flee before the harsh light exposes its hideous nature. It's worth noting that Sammy's water just broke, and he quite possibly dumpied. I'm not sure why it's worth noting, just that it is. I digress. The yard sale radio suddenly turns on, and a nice sounding woman starts asking for his help. Then the radio speaks again. A woman's voice tells him that she knows how to stop the monster if he just helps her escape. Which raises a few questions. How does she know his name, his location in the house, the monster's presence, and how is she talking through an old-ass yard sale radio like it's a walkie-talkie? If she knows how to stop the monster, it would certainly be in her best interest to tell the kid how to stop it right then and there, not to withhold vital information as a presumed negotiation tactic for her release. It just doesn't make any sense, and makes me highly suspicious that the mysterious woman cryptically communicating through an old radio is either the Shadow Witch herself or working with her somehow. All to say, I would instantly peg this as a classic damsel in distress trap. The problem here is that, much like Joe and Paula, this kid was also targeted because he's gullible, isolated, and dumb. So the creepy radio lady instructs the kid to go break into Clint's house and unlock the basement door where she says that she's being kept against her will, at which point she will totally help him defeat the evil monster under his bed. And that's exactly what Sammy does. Somehow the creature's astral projection Shadow Witch form is corporeal and able to tiptoe over to the front door and unlock it. Then lure Clint away from the living room by making spooky noises and rustling papers around. this doesn't really explain how Sammy got the keys. Maybe Clint left them inserted, who knows. But what I don't get is, if the thing's shadow form can interact with a physical world, why can't it just unlock the basement door itself? Why does it need some random dopey kid? I suppose it might not have actually unlocked the door and Clint had just left it unlocked because it's a rural home and ain't nothing ever happens out here. We're like a big family community. Just as the kid's about to pop the lock, Clint rushes in and stops him. Now, it appears that Sammy wasn't able to get it unlocked, but as we'll come to find out here in a bit, he did. The events that will transpire in a few minutes all could have been prevented by Clint simply rechecking the lock after the kid's attempt. Naturally, Clint's like, "What the F, man? What are you doing in my house? Why is everyone in this neighborhood completely off the rockers? State your business." Sammy tells him that the monster's chasing him. This is pretty concerning to Clint because, as far as he knows, it's supposed to be in his basement. Well, Clint calls Sammy's mom to come pick him up and waits about an hour for them to stop hugging. "Alright, get off my porch. It's 3 a.m. and I have work in the morning." Clint finally has enough and heads back inside. The door suddenly slams shut behind him without him touching it, as the TV flicks on with the same creepy lady voice coming from the radio next to it. Mind you, this happens right in front of Brandy and Sammy, and they just kind of off to Burger King afterward. As would I, if someone's front door slammed shut on its own while Samara started talking through their TV. Clint becomes mesmerized as his TV suddenly starts fully rotating at maximum speed.
Man, I gotta lay off the peyote.
The nightmare creature pops on the screen and gloats about how 2 decades of Joe starving it was brought to an end by a scared child. I don't want to finger point here, but I believe she's referring to you, Sammy. It is at this moment that Clint realizes he did not check the lock. He manages to survive this close encounter by running for his life. Not without aim, though. Clint busts into Susan's house, choke slams her to the ground, and demands answers. With what little air that she can push through her trachea while Clint's grasp around her neck tightens, she wheezes out, "Chester is 2 doors down." He races over and asks Chester for help killing this thing. Chester grabs his pump and bandolier, and they both hop in his truck. During the ride back to Joe's house, Chester tells him that this thing cannot be killed, only contained. He knows this because they've shot it and tortured it. You're telling me that you can Rick James this thing, but not turn it into Campbell's Chunky. Now, whenever anybody tells me that something cannot be killed, I have to ask, are you sure? Because literally everything in reality can be transmuted to its entropic end state with application of enough energy. I highly doubt this vile crawler has Avenger-level plot armor. As far as I can tell, you haven't set it on fire, or thrown it into a vat of acid. It's gonna be hard for it to regenerate if it's been chemically dissolved into liquefied puke. Their discussion comes to an abrupt end when Clint gets jump scared through the rearview mirror. That's like the exact same thing that happened to Ramona and the woman in the yard. You gotta lock your arms off, people. Can't be swinging the wheel all loose while you look around. Lock 'em off. Well, they finally make it to Brandy's house on foot. Why did they choose to go there instead of back to Joe's where they knew that the monster was? I don't know. Maybe they thought since it was chasing the kid that they could intercept it there. When they arrive, it's clear that the monster beat them. Despite the mom holding on to her son's $12 Amazon nightlight like it was a holy cross blessed by Jesus Christ himself, she looks like she was run through the slap chop.
Hey, look, so you want a little bit of onions, you don't want to drag out the food processor? The skin comes right off. You see that?
Sammy runs into Clint, who tells him to just run as far as he can. Chester tears off through the house chasing the monster, missing with half his ammo and sending slugs through basically every wall in the house, one of which plows right through Clint's shoulder blade. However much lead he did punch through the creature, it wasn't enough. He takes a claw to the eye, and that's about the last we see of him. Now, Clint is the last man standing in the house. The thing warps him into Scorpion's netherrealm where it tries to sucker punch him with that welcome punch.
Welcome
Hilariously, Clint sees that coming from a mile away and reverse welcome punches it. Yeah, they both go blow for blow. Clint gets slashed up badly, but manages to hold his own. It is a starved-to-death skeleton at this point, so I would hope so. After killing Brandy and Chester, shrugging off half a tube of buckshot, taking a flurry of fists from Clint, and finally getting the upper hand, it goes for the execution. Just got one piece of bad news for you, Robbins. Clint is undeniably him. Through the power of a rune inscribed Talk to the Hand, the disgusting, emaciated freak tucks its tail and cowers. The movie ends with Clint laughing in its face, not because he won, but how he won. How utterly pathetic this creature is that it can't stand the mere sight of a symbol. What kind of dull, primitive organism gets totally shut down by something that a 2-year-old could finger paint? So, in the end, the creature was defeated by symbology, trapped under Clint's watchful eye and ferocious pimp slap. Welp. Back into the basement for 20 more years. In the end, a lot of people died because Joe believed its lies, fed people to the monster, did a poor job containing it, and didn't really try to kill it. Chester and Susan had knowledge of the monster, yet kept it from Clint for no discernible reason. This was bound to end poorly considering Clint inherited the property and was inevitably going to open that door not knowing what was on the other side, or at least not contain it properly. One thing's for sure, Susan's going into the same hole next to our little Rancor pet for her part in all this. Moral of the story, don't keep wild animals as pets.